Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me. It wasn't the first time I heard those words. You were always just a backup plan. But when she said them, something inside me snapped. I had spent years in a marriage that I thought was based on trust, on love, on mutual respect. But those words, cold, matter of fact, shattered everything. In that moment, I understood. I understood exactly why I'd been so blind. I had been nothing but a safety net, a cushion, a fallback. The words echoed in my head, and the weight of them was more than I could carry. A backup plan. We had been together for 8 years, and I had always thought I knew her. I thought I knew every part of her, her quirks, her smile, the way her eyes would light up when she talked about something she loved. But apparently, I had missed the most important thing. I was never the choice. I was just there, an option in case everything else fell apart. I remember the moment I first realized something wasn't right. It wasn't some grand confrontation, no dramatic argument. It was a feeling, a gnawing sensation in the pit of my stomach that I couldn't shake. I wasn't the type of guy to assume the worst, but there was this emptiness, like a space between us that wasn't there before. At first, I brushed it off. She'd been busy with work, and I was no saint either. Life had a way of piling up, of pushing two people apart even when they didn't want to be. But then the text started. And not from me, no, from him. I never meant to look, never wanted to invade her privacy. But one night, my phone buzzed next to her. It was a notification from her work email, something about a meeting the next day. She was already asleep beside me, and I reached for my phone to silence it, but I made the mistake of seeing her screen. His name was there. Zane. A name I'd never heard before. It wasn't just the name. It was the context of their conversation. Casual at first, joking about a report, laughing about how much coffee they drank that day. But then, the tone shifted. I miss you, the message read. That was the moment I felt the world tilt. My breath caught in my throat. Miss you, I whispered to myself, as if the words could somehow make sense. It didn't feel right. But what could I do? It was just a message, right? Just a coincidence. But then, there was more. You're going to make me wait long again? I didn't know how to process it. I stayed frozen for a few minutes, staring at the phone. There was a knot in my stomach now, and it was tightening with every passing second. I wanted to wake her up, to demand answers, but I didn't. Instead, I put the phone back down gently, as if somehow doing that would stop the truth from sinking in. But it didn't. It never does. The next few days felt like I was walking around in a fog. I tried to focus on work, tried to tell myself I was just imagining things, that it was all some misunderstanding. But every time she went to her phone, my mind couldn't stop imagining what she might be typing. What else had she said to him? How long had this been going on? A few days later, I couldn't keep it in any longer. I had to confront her. I had to ask, Maria, my voice felt shaky, foreign even to myself. What's going on with you and Zane? Her face went pale, but she didn't look surprised. What do you mean? She asked, her tone too casual for my liking. I didn't have to explain further. I didn't need to say I had seen the messages. She knew what I was talking about. You've been texting him a lot. And you're close. She paused, and for a second, I saw something in her eyes, something cold. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't regret. It was almost like she was waiting for me to ask, like she'd known this moment was coming all along. Okay, fine, she said, exhaling as though releasing a breath she'd been holding in. He's been there for me when you haven't been. The words stung like a slap in the face. I could feel my heart drop. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even upset at first. I was confused. Confused and utterly broken. You've been seeing him? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Not like that, she said quickly. But I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want to tell you because I knew. I knew how you'd react. I wanted to scream. I wanted to say everything that had been building up inside me. But instead, I just stood there. My mind was racing. She had been seeing him. She had been waiting for him when I wasn't around. I had never been the first choice. But then came the words that finally broke me. You were always just a backup plan, you know? She said, eyes meeting mine without a hint of apology. When things with Zane didn't work out, I had you to fall back on. You were always there, always willing to be the perfect husband. But I never felt like I could really be myself with you. Not like I could with him. That was it. That was the final straw. I had spent so many years thinking that love was about commitment, about being there for each other through thick and thin. But all along, I had been a safety net. A cushion in case the other person fell. I wasn't the priority. I wasn't the one. I was the alternative. I think we need to end this, I said, barely able to speak the words. And just like that, I erased myself from the equation. I didn't stay and fight. I didn't beg. I didn't try to make it work. There was no coming back from that. Once you know you're just a backup plan, there's nothing left to hold on to. I left that night. I packed my things, and I walked out the door, knowing I could never come back. I didn't need to hear her say she was sorry, because I knew she wasn't. I didn't need her to try and fix it, because she couldn't. I wasn't someone she truly wanted. I was just someone who had always been there, waiting for a future that was never meant for me. And so, I erased myself from her life entirely. There was no dramatic goodbye, no big emotional confrontation, just silence. And the painful truth that sometimes the hardest thing you can do is walk away from someone who never truly cared. But in the end, it was the only choice I had left. It's strange how something you've built for years can crumble in an instant. The hardest part wasn't even the betrayal itself. It was the realization that everything I thought I knew about her, about us, was a lie. I remember walking out that night, my suitcase in hand, my mind a whirlwind of disbelief. But it wasn't just anger that fueled my steps. It was a deep, gnawing emptiness. I had erased myself from her life, but the truth was, I didn't know who I was without her anymore. The next few days felt like walking through a fog. I couldn't focus on work. I couldn't sleep. Every corner of the apartment we had shared seemed to scream her name, and I hated it. It wasn't just the little things, the smell of her perfume on the pillow, the way she'd leave her coffee cup on the counter. It was the quiet. I realized how much I'd come to depend on her presence, even when she wasn't emotionally there. It had become my norm, and now, without her, everything felt wrong. I tried calling her once. The urge to get closure, to hear her side, to find some kind of explanation, was overwhelming. But when she picked up, there was no apology in her voice. No sadness. It was as if the person I had been to her had never really mattered. "Are you okay?" I asked, just to hear her speak, to see if she felt anything for me at all. "I'm fine," she said flatly. "This is what I needed. I told you I wasn't happy." Her words hung in the air like a heavy weight. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even angry. She was just done. I wasn't sure if that was worse or if the betrayal itself was. "Do you even care?" I couldn't stop myself from asking. She paused, a long silence stretching between us. "I care about my happiness," she said softly, almost matter-of-factly. "You were never a part of that. I just didn't know how to let go until now." And that was it. That was all I was to her. A step along the way. I hung up the phone, feeling the weight of her words settle in my chest like a lead anchor. But even though I told myself I was done, that I was better off without her, the truth was harder to face. I didn't know how to let go either. I had spent years trying to build something with her, and now it was gone. Just like that. So, I did the only thing I could think of. I threw myself into work. I buried my emotions under spreadsheets, meetings, and the never-ending grind of daily life. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could forget. Maybe if I focused on something else, the memories wouldn't keep creeping in. But I was wrong. They came for me at the most unexpected moments. When I saw couples walking hand in hand, when I heard a song we used to listen to together, or when I caught a glimpse of our old photos, stacked up in a drawer I never had the heart to clear out. Then, one night, a message came through on my phone. It wasn't her. It was a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated before opening it, but something told me I needed to see what it said. "Hey, I know you don't know me, but I need to tell you something. This is Zane, the guy your wife's been seeing. You deserve to know the truth." I felt my blood run cold. I knew the moment I opened that message, I would regret it. But I opened it anyway. He didn't just stop there. Zane went on to explain how things between him and Maria had developed far beyond just office banter. He told me things I had never imagined, things I didn't want to know. How they had been planning a life together, how they'd spent weekends away from the office, how she had told him everything about me. Everything. All the things I thought were private, safe between us, she had shared with him. She had made him her real priority, while I had been nothing more than a placeholder. The worst part? He told me that Maria had actually been the one to push for the end of our marriage. She had been tired of living in what she saw as a comfortable lie. Zane was her new reality, and she had made it clear that nothing was going to stop them from being together. I didn't know how to process this new information. I wanted to feel anger, to feel the rage that should come with such a betrayal. But instead, I felt numb. It was like I was looking at someone else's life, someone else's pain. I didn't respond to Zane's message. What was there to say? I had already erased myself from her life. I wasn't about to go chasing after something that was already gone. But even then, the weight of what had happened sat heavy on my chest. Maria had been the love of my life. She had been my everything. And yet, I had never been enough for her. In that moment, I realized that no matter how hard I tried to move on, no matter how many hours I threw into work, no matter how many new distractions I found, I would never be able to shake the reality of what had happened. She had chosen him, and I had to learn to live with the fact that I was never really the one she wanted. The next few weeks were a blur of numbness. I walked through life like a ghost, barely holding on to anything that resembled reality. It's strange how quickly everything can fall apart when you stop being someone's priority. I stayed in the same apartment, the place we had shared, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know where else to go. It felt like I was trapped in a cage of memories. Maria's absence hung in the air like a constant weight. There were no more late-night talks, no more soft laughter in the kitchen, no more random hugs or moments that made everything feel right. It was like she had erased herself from my life as completely as I had erased myself from hers. I thought about calling her a few times, just to understand, just to hear her admit what had really happened, but I stopped myself each time. She had made her choice. I knew that. Yet, there was this part of me that couldn't let go of the hope that maybe, just maybe, she would come back and tell me it was all a mistake. But that was never going to happen. One night, as I sat in the living room alone, I got another message. This time, it was from a mutual friend of ours. I just wanted to let you know. Maria's seeing someone else now. I didn't know if you had heard. That was it. It wasn't a question. It wasn't an apology. Just an informational message. For some reason, that hit me harder than anything. I don't even know why. Maybe because it felt like a final confirmation that the life we had built together was nothing more than a story that didn't matter to anyone anymore. Maria had moved on, and here I was, stuck in the wreckage of what used to be. I could have confronted her again. I could have tried to find out more, maybe even begged for some sense of closure. But I realized something. Closure wasn't something you could get from someone else. It had to come from within. I had spent too long chasing after someone who had already moved on, and the worst part was, I hadn't even realized it until it was too late. I deleted her number. I blocked her on social media. It wasn't about anger anymore. It wasn't about trying to punish her. It was about finding the strength to let go. But that didn't mean it was easy. Every time I saw a couple, I'd think about what Maria and I had once had. I'd replay the moments in my mind. The quiet mornings together, the trips we took, the way she would smile when I surprised her with her favorite flowers. And then, I'd remind myself that it was all gone. She was gone. The hardest part, though, was realizing how little I had truly known her. How much of my life had been based on an illusion. She had been right about one thing. We weren't happy, not really. We had built a life based on what we thought we were supposed to want, and when things got difficult, we both went looking for something else. She had found Zane. And me? I was left to rebuild myself from the ground up. A week had passed since the message from our friend, and the silence between Maria and me felt suffocating. Every inch of the apartment reminded me of her. Her books still sat on the coffee table. Her coat still hung on the back of the door. It felt like I was living in a memory, but the hardest part was seeing the things I couldn't get rid of. Her presence was still everywhere, even though she was long gone. I threw myself into work, thinking it would numb the pain, but all it did was make me feel emptier. I couldn't focus. My mind kept drifting back to the past. Every time I sat down at my desk, the image of her with him, Zane, kept flashing in my mind. I knew it wasn't healthy, but I couldn't escape it. I kept wondering what was so special about him. What did I lack that he had? One evening, I found myself sitting at the same bar where Maria and I used to go for drinks after work. It had been our spot, a place where we would laugh and talk about everything. I ordered a whiskey, the kind she would always get me when we'd get the rare night out without responsibilities looming. I drank it slowly, not out of pleasure, but because the alcohol seemed to dull the ache in my chest, just a little. The bartender was a guy I'd seen a few times before. He asked if I was okay. I wasn't, but I didn't say that. Instead, I shrugged and said I was just dealing with some life stuff. He didn't press, but as he walked away, I overheard him talking to another customer. They were talking about Maria, about her new relationship with Zane. and the words they used made my stomach turn. They weren't talking about her like the person I thought I knew. They talked about her like she was his, like she belonged to him. I wasn't angry. I was crushed. How had I become this shadow in my own life? She had replaced me so quickly, so effortlessly, and here I was, still clinging to the past, still haunted by what could have been. I stayed at the bar longer than I meant to. The whiskey numbed me, but it didn't make me forget. I couldn't stop thinking about how easily she had moved on, how she had erased me from her life, just like I had erased myself from hers. It was then that I realized something. The anger wasn't the thing that hurt the most. It wasn't the betrayal. It wasn't even the loneliness. What really hurt was the fact that I had allowed myself to be someone's backup plan for so long. I had settled for a life where I wasn't the first choice. I wasn't the one who was wanted. And somehow, I had convinced myself that being second was enough. But it wasn't. It never was. I left the bar that night with a decision in mind. I was done. I had been holding on to the idea of who we were, but I had to let that go. I had to let go of the image of the happy couple, of the future I thought we'd share. The past was gone, and it was time I started moving forward. The next morning, I packed up the last of my things. I didn't leave a note, didn't call her. I wasn't going to beg for answers anymore. I wasn't going to be the guy who waited around for a relationship that had already ended without either of us realizing it. I deleted the last of her texts from my phone, closed the chapter on us. And just like that, I erased myself from the equation entirely. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. But as I stood there, staring at the empty apartment, something inside me shifted. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. I didn't know what I was looking for when I left the apartment. It wasn't a sense of closure. Hell, I had erased that months ago. It wasn't even the promise of healing, because that felt as distant as a sunset. But there was one thing I knew for sure. I couldn't stay there, in that apartment filled with echoes of her laugh, her footsteps, her presence. It felt like a haunted house, and I was the ghost. The first few days after I left were a blur. I stayed with a friend who didn't ask questions, which was exactly what I needed. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want sympathy or advice. I didn't want anyone telling me how to feel. I just wanted to disappear for a while, to be swallowed by something else, anything else, so I wouldn't have to think about Maria and Zane. But every night, when I lay in the unfamiliar guest bed, the thoughts would come rushing back. The what-ifs. The endless replay of moments I should have noticed. The conversations I thought were innocent but were laced with lies. The hollow realization that everything I believed in had been a farce. I started running. Every morning, I would get up and put on my sneakers, ignoring the ache in my chest, and head out into the streets. The rhythm of my feet pounding the pavement became a distraction, a way to force the thoughts to the back of my mind. It was hard at first. I wasn't doing it to get fit. I was doing it because I needed to outrun my own thoughts. But no matter how far I ran, they always caught up to me. The pain was always there, lurking just behind the next corner. Then, one morning, I saw her. I was halfway through my run, sweat stinging my eyes, when I saw Maria walking down the street. She was with Zane. My heart froze in my chest. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't look away. It wasn't some dramatic confrontation. There was no yelling, no tension in the air. They were just walking together, laughing. It was so simple, so normal. They were the couple I thought we would be, the one I had imagined so many times in my head. But it was them, not me. Maria looked happy. Her hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and she wore the kind of carefree smile I hadn't seen in months. Zane's hand was casually resting on her shoulder, and it was clear they were comfortable with each other. The way they moved together, it was effortless. And that's when I realized the truth. She had moved on. I wasn't part of her life anymore. I wasn't even a thought. It felt like a punch in the stomach. I wanted to shout. I wanted to run up to her and demand to know why. Why had she left me behind? Why hadn't I been enough? But I didn't. Instead, I stood frozen, watching as they walked past me without a single glance in my direction. It was as if I was invisible, as if the years we had shared meant nothing. I kept running after that, but it wasn't to escape the pain anymore. It was to punish myself. I pushed myself harder, faster, trying to outrun the burning in my lungs, trying to outrun the bitterness in my veins. But it didn't work. The truth was, there was no escaping what had happened. When I got back to the place I was staying, I felt like I had been hit by a truck. The anger, the jealousy, the sense of loss. It all hit me at once, and I was powerless to stop it. I didn't know where to direct the emotions. There was no one to blame, no one to yell at. It was just me, just the ghost of the man I had been. But the thing that really hit hardest was this. I wasn't angry at her anymore. I wasn't angry at Zane. I was angry at myself for not seeing it sooner, for not trusting my gut when things started slipping away. I had let myself become a placeholder. I had allowed myself to be second choice. And that was the part one would never forgive myself for. I spent the rest of the day staring at the wall, unable to do anything but think. I had erased myself from her life, but it turned out I had also erased myself from my own. I thought I was done with her. After everything, after all the lies, the betrayal, and the constant ache that followed me everywhere, I had convinced myself I was better off without her. But it wasn't that easy. It never is. You can't just shut off a part of your life like flipping a switch. The memories, the connection, they stay with you, like a scar that fades but never fully disappears. Weeks passed, and I was learning to exist again. I was starting to get used to being alone. I had my routine, my new rhythm. I was working more, keeping busy, slowly rebuilding myself. But there was still that void, quiet, always lurking, threatening to pull me back into the past. Then one evening, just as I was heading out to grab dinner, my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number at first, but the message was unmistakable. "We need to talk." It was Maria. My heart dropped to my stomach. I hadn't heard from her in weeks, and honestly, I wasn't sure I wanted to. But there it was, her message staring back at me, pulling me into the past I was trying so hard to leave behind. I didn't respond right away. I stood there, staring at my screen, wrestling with myself. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to pretend like I didn't see it. Another part of me, maybe the weaker part, wanted to pick up the phone and ask her what she wanted. After a few minutes of hesitation, I decided to call her. I had to know what this was about. When she picked up, it wasn't the coldness I expected. It wasn't even an apology. It was uncertain, hesitant. "Hi," she said, her voice quiet. "I don't know if I should have reached out, but I need to talk to you." I took a deep breath. "About what?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of hearing the hurt in my voice, but it was impossible to mask. She paused for a long time, and I could hear the hesitation in her breathing. "About us. About everything. Can we meet?" I didn't want to meet her. I didn't want to give her the chance to hurt me again. But there was something in her voice that made me agree. Something that tugged at me, pulling me back into the web I thought I had escaped. We agreed to meet at a small park we used to visit together. A place that held too many memories, too much weight. I arrived early, pacing back and forth, trying to calm myself down. My hands were shaking, my mind running in 1,000 directions. When she arrived, she looked different. The confident, carefree woman I had known seemed smaller somehow. Her eyes were tired, her shoulders hunched like she had been carrying a weight for too long. She didn't speak at first. She just stood there, staring at the ground, as if unsure where to begin. I was about to say something, anything, when she finally looked up at me. "I've made a mess of things," she said softly. "I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry." The words hung in the air between us, but they didn't feel like an apology. They felt like an admission of guilt. I could tell that she was struggling to find the right words, but I wasn't sure I wanted to hear them. "Not anymore. I didn't mean for it to happen this way," she continued, her voice cracking slightly. "I never wanted to hurt you. But I was lost. And when Zane came along, it was like I finally felt seen again. Like I mattered." The words stung. I wanted to shout at her, to tell her how foolish she was for throwing away everything we had. But I didn't. Instead, I stayed silent, letting her words wash over me like a flood. "I should have been honest with you from the start," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wasn't happy. I thought I could ignore it, but I couldn't. And now I've lost you." I looked at her for a long moment, trying to process everything she was saying. My emotions were all over the place. Anger, confusion, sadness. But the one thing that stood out was the truth in her eyes. She wasn't lying now. She wasn't trying to make excuses. For the first time in a long time, I realized that I wasn't angry at her anymore. I wasn't even angry at Zane. I was angry at myself for not seeing it sooner, for not trusting myself enough to let go when I should have. But most of all, I was angry that I had allowed myself to be someone's second choice for so long. "I don't know what you want from me, Maria," I said, my voice low, steady. "I've spent all this time trying to move on. trying to rebuild myself. And now you want me to just let all of that go? She nodded, tears beginning to form in her eyes. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve that. But I need you to know that I'm sorry, that I never meant for it to go this far. I wanted to say something. I wanted to tell her that I couldn't forgive her, that I couldn't let her back into my life. But the truth was, I wasn't sure if I was ready to walk away completely. For a long time, I had thought I could never live without her. But now, standing here, facing her for the first time since everything fell apart, I realized I wasn't sure what I wanted anymore. I had erased myself from her life. But the question now was, could I erase her from mine? The park was eerily quiet, the soft rustling of leaves the only sound breaking the stillness between us. Maria stood there, eyes filled with regret, as I tried to process everything she had just said. I felt the weight of her apology hanging in the air, but it didn't feel like a lifeline. It felt like another chain, pulling me back into something I was trying to escape. She took a step closer, her voice softer now. I know you're angry. You have every right to be. I never wanted to hurt you, but I didn't know how to make it stop. I didn't know how to leave Zane without losing everything. I thought, maybe if I stayed with you, it wouldn't matter, that we'd find a way to make it work. But it was a lie, and I'm sorry for dragging you into it. Her words pierced me, but they didn't hit with the impact I thought they would. I wasn't angry anymore. I was numb. Her apology didn't change what had happened. It didn't change the fact that, for months, I had been nothing but a fallback option, a safety net for when things with Zane didn't work out. I don't know what you want me to say, Maria, I said, the words leaving my mouth almost mechanically. You've already made your choice. You chose him. And I chose to leave, to erase myself from this. I thought that would make it easier, but now, I trailed off, unsure of what I was even trying to say. She looked at me, her face pale, eyes pleading. I never meant for you to feel like that. I never meant to hurt you the way I did. Please, I just need you to understand that I'm not the person I was before. I couldn't help but laugh, a bitter sound that felt foreign to me. You think I don't understand? I understand perfectly. You were never the person I thought you were. And I don't know who you are now. There was a long pause. Neither of us knew what to say next. I can't fix this, I said finally. I can't go back to what we were, because it's not us anymore. You can't just say you're sorry and expect things to be the same. Maria stood there, her shoulders slumping as if the weight of my words had physically hit her. I could see the tears welling up in her eyes, but I didn't feel the need to comfort her. This wasn't about comforting her. This was about me. I'm not asking you to forgive me, she whispered. I'm asking you to decide if there's anything left for us. Because I can't stop thinking about you. And I don't know if I made the right choice, but I need you to know that I don't want to lose you forever. I swallowed hard, feeling something inside me break apart. There was a part of me that still wanted to believe in her, in us. But that part was small, barely a whisper against the tide of everything that had happened. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to feel everything. The hurt, the betrayal, the years I had spent trying to be someone I thought she needed, someone I thought I needed. And the truth was, I wasn't sure who I was without her. I wasn't sure if I wanted to find out. I exhaled slowly, the decision finally starting to settle in my gut. You want me to make a choice? Fine. I choose to walk away. Because if I stay here, if I let you back in, I'll just be going in circles, stuck in a life that's already falling apart. And I'm done with that. I'm done being someone's second choice. She opened her mouth to say something, but I didn't let her. I turned and started to walk away, not looking back. It wasn't easy. It wasn't even close to easy. But as I walked away from her, from everything we had, I felt the first real glimmer of freedom in months. I wasn't her backup plan anymore. I was my own person. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I knew I was making the right choice. Months passed. Slowly, I rebuilt my life, piece by piece. I found a new apartment, a new routine, and a new sense of peace. I spent time rediscovering myself, things I'd forgotten about while being wrapped up in a relationship that had long since turned toxic. I started running again, not to outrun the pain, but because it had become a part of who I was, a symbol of my resilience. For the first time in a long time, I was content. I was no longer waiting for a call, no longer wondering if Maria would come back or if I could somehow fix what was broken. I stopped thinking about her, about the lies, about the broken promises. It wasn't that I had stopped caring, It was just that I had learned to care about myself more. And then one day, as I was leaving work, my phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. "Hey, I don't know if you're still in town, but I need to talk to you. It's Maria. Please call me." My heart skipped a beat. It had been so long since I'd heard from her, and I wasn't sure how to feel. Part of me was tempted to ignore it, to move on without ever looking back. But something told me this wasn't just a normal message. So I called her. She picked up on the second ring, her voice shaky. "I know you probably hate me," she started, "but I need to tell you something." I waited, the silence hanging heavy between us. "What is it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I made a huge mistake," she said, and there was no mistaking the genuine regret in her tone. "Zane. He wasn't who I thought he was. It's over. He's gone, and I've lost everything. I just wanted to tell you that I'm sorry for everything. And I know I don't deserve it. But if you could just hear me out one last time." My pulse quickened, but I didn't interrupt. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her, wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, she had finally seen the truth. But I knew better now. I had learned my lesson the hard way. "Maria, you made your choice," I said, my voice steady. "You walked away from me, and you can't just come back because things didn't work out with him. I'm not a backup plan anymore. I'm not here for you to fall back on when things go wrong." I paused, allowing the weight of my words to sink in. "I've moved on, and I'm better for it," I added, my heart not heavy with anger but with the certainty of a man who had finally freed himself. She didn't respond right away. The silence felt like a death sentence to the past we had shared. I could almost hear her trying to find the words, but I knew there was nothing left to say. "You've made your bed, Maria," I continued, "and now you have to lie in it. I hope you find what you're looking for, but it's not going to be me." I hung up without waiting for her to say anything more. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was simply free. As the days passed, I heard nothing more from her. It was as if she had disappeared from my life entirely, as she should have. But then, about a month later, I got a call. It wasn't Maria this time. It was a mutual friend, someone who had been close to both of us. "I just wanted to let you know," they said, their voice filled with a hint of hesitation. "Maria, she's been going through a rough time. Zane left her. It turns out he was seeing someone else the whole time. She's devastated." I didn't feel satisfaction, not exactly. But I did feel something. It wasn't schadenfreude, but it was close. Maybe it was just a sense of justice. She had built a life on lies, on making me her backup plan, and now she was left to deal with the consequences. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, though I wasn't sure I meant it. But she made her choices, and now she has to live with them. A silence hung between us, and then the conversation ended. And so life went on. I met someone new, not because I needed someone to fill the void Maria had left, but because I realized that I was worth being loved, truly loved, by someone who saw me as more than just an option. Her name was Emily. She wasn't perfect, but neither was I. We had our share of struggles, but we worked through them together, because that's what real love is: partnership, honesty, respect. Maria? She faded into the past. I didn't wish her harm, but I no longer wished for her either. I had learned the most important lesson of all. I wasn't anyone's backup plan, and I never would be again. Please like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. I read them all.